Welcome to Satsang.
Hello, Vishrant. Can you please talk about what you wish you knew as a seeker?
What I wish I knew as a seeker, it would have been nice to know a little bit more before I was a seeker. Like most people, I went to school and basically got brainwashed into believing that somehow financial achievement in life as a male was the ultimate thing to do. And to win at making money, to win at being successful in business. And I also got programmed to believe that I was separate from God and that God was somewhere else and that I could pray to God and maybe God could do things for me. So I was brainwashed into a couple of beliefs that really get in the way of most people's spiritual ascendance. As I became more interested and more curious about how my mind worked, I got to start to challenge some of these beliefs. And in challenging them, I found that a lot of them didn't hold water. They just weren't true. With business, I was successful at a very young age. And I found out that being successful at business, having money, doesn't make you happy. That there's been a bit of a con. As a matter of fact, a big con. And there was something really lacking in my education. I came in contact with Eastern religions through association with sannyasins of Bhagwan Sri Rajneeshas in the late 70s and started eating at their restaurant, Zorba the Buddha. And these guys were into something very different, something that I thought at first was quite silly. It didn't fit into my upbringing, my education. So I just thought they were being silly. But then I started listening to a little bit of what Osho was saying, and I realised, there is another way to live on this planet. There is another way to find happiness besides being financially successful. And maybe this way that he was teaching was the real way. Because at the age of 28, when I probably became a seeker, I had already retired from business. I'd already made enough money, I'd been successful enough to retire. But it hadn't really brought me happiness. It had brought me a lot of fun. But Osho was talking about peace. He was talking about enlightenment. He was talking about love. And these were things that I didn't know that much about. I thought I did, but I didn't. And on attending a group that was being run by one of his sannyasins in Fremantle, West Australia, it was a 2-day group. I had a vision, and I don't normally have visions. I'm not that type of person. And in this vision, I was looking down a great long water tunnel, like must have been 8 foot wide. And at the end of this water tunnel, or this water pipe, was this little Indian man calling, going, "Come here," like this. And I looked really close. I could see it was Osho. And in a lot of ways, that is when I became a seeker, because I followed that invitation and became a disciple, a sannyasin of Osho Rajneesh's in 1983. And that changed my life a fair bit, because I was a three-piece suit man, businessman, and all of a sudden I was wearing orange clothes or red clothes or pink clothes, and I was wearing a mala with a picture of an Indian guru on. And this was a big change for me. It was a big backflip. But there was just something in me that knew that this was the way to go. That there was something more to life than just being successful at business, getting married, having children, buying houses. I already had houses. It's like, it doesn't make you happy. It's not fulfilling, because once you're programmed to win, you constantly desire more and more and more things. It's just the way it goes. You don't stop. You can't. You're programmed to keep going. And he was talking about finding peace. And he was talking about meditation, and so I practiced meditation with him, and it was lovely. I learned how to quieten my mind. I learned how to be silent inside. And eventually I found that what we really are has nothing to do with the mind, the ego, or the body. In Satori, I found myself as the universe, as a result of his presence, as a result of self-inquiry, as a result of being a seeker. But it would have been nice to have been told when I was a child that we can know ourselves as the universe, that we're not this body, we're not this mind, this is simply a spacesuit. And that we are way greater than that. And that everything we think is imaginary, is a dream. And that love is here to be perceived if we're open enough. But these are all things that I wasn't told. These are things that I discovered. The most beautiful thing is love. Unconditional love. It's very beautiful. But where in our schooling do we learn about unconditional love? See, to me, that was more important than making money, owning houses. More important than anything. This beautiful, beautiful love that I started to find, but had not really been told about. I suspect that what I considered love was actual primal bonding. Something a little bit more primitive, something to do with the mind, attachment, ownership, possession, need. And I actually probably thought that was love for a long time. It wasn't until the late 80s that I found love. Not in loving someone else, but just love, just unconditional love. It's so beautiful. Would have been nice to have been told about love beforehand. There's this assumption that everybody loves. If you're closed, you don't love much. If you're highly defended, you don't love much. It's not possible. Too many filters. I was never told how valuable it was. I was never told how beautiful beingness is. I was led astray, like a lot of people I know, into believing a whole pile of things that simply weren't true. And it was at that point, around that time, that I started examining all belief systems that I had that were based on other people's input or institutions' input, and undoing them, because these beliefs were keeping me prisoner. And I knew it. And I knew they were rubbish. And so I started finding love. and I decided that I'd change my life. So I walked into my companies and gave my companies to my staff, and I went and walked around Australia for 4 years pretty much barefoot in search of my heart, because I knew that that was the most valuable thing here, love. And in that adventure, that great undoing that occurred in that walk around, I started to find love and realised that it was very lovely to be in love, to have love, to just perceive love. So I went back to school and trained in psychology, counselling, psychotherapy, naturopathy, so I could have some tools to be in service of human beings, because the love that was being perceived was affecting my mind in a way that I just wanted to help others. This is very beautiful, but this isn't something I was told as a seeker, really. It wasn't something I was told earlier than being a seeker either. So I wish I had been told these things way earlier. It would have been a lot better. At the age of 33, I knew I was the universe, but only in memory because the Satori had gone. I knew that the only thing worth serving here was love, but I had to undo the war machine that I'd become to be able to do that. So a great undoing occurred. And so as a seeker, I wish I'd been told the truth. It's not that I think the people who were teaching me were lying to me. They were ignorant too. They just didn't know. They didn't know that the most valuable thing on this plane is love. And they didn't know that material success, wealth, does not bring you happiness. Serving love does. Are there any questions? Any statements? Any challenges to anything that's been said here today?
The first question is, what is the best advice that you ever received from a teacher?
You know, the question's a hard question, because I look back at the history of my life and I see that there were many things that were said by many teachers over many years that were very valuable. Trying to work out which one would be the most valuable would be hard, because the early teachings led me to where I was in the future, where I got better teachings. And so without those early teachings, I wouldn't have been able to be in a place where I could get the higher teachings. So it's very difficult to say. The earliest teaching that I got that I remember that was really, really valuable was when I was 19, and I was told that victims' lives don't work, and that to be a victim is a choice. You have to volunteer to be a victim, because life is just the way life is. You can turn yourself into a victim of it or not. That is a choice. I think that was one of the most valuable teachings that I ever got, as far as the mind is concerned. To live a life not being a victim to life, not being a victim of other people, not being a victim of situations, not being a victim of myself. Wow, that's pretty cool.
The following question has been written by Brian. Is resting in or as awareness a good practice for higher consciousness?
In resting in where?
In awareness.
So you've got to have a look at, well, what is higher consciousness really? And awareness aware of itself is enlightenment, if it's continuous. If it's temporary, it's a satori. You've got to look at, well, what's really, really important here and what's not important here. For me, what's important is awareness aware of itself, not the mind resting in beingness. That's still a mind trip. Awareness aware of itself is basically home. And anything short of that is still, in a way, lost. As far as higher consciousness is concerned, higher consciousness is just being able to see through the mind completely and not get caught in it. And in lower consciousness, people just get caught in their minds, they get caught in reactivity. In higher consciousness, it's more of a response to life rather than reactivity. And so I don't know if resting in beingness will raise your consciousness levels, because consciousness levels rise as a result of seeing through the mind. In seeing through the mind, we remove the obstacles that are in the way. We remove the things that are detrimental, the things that are creating suffering. And someone who has higher consciousness is probably pretty cool. They're probably not reactive. They probably respond to situations. They probably have an equanimous mind, a mind that doesn't get rattled very easily, if at all. Resting in beingness, minus satori, doesn't really facilitate that. So if you just keep watching the mind, you raise your consciousness levels. You just be the witness of the mind. See what it's doing. See what everything it's doing, rather than getting caught in the story of it, rather than analysing it. Just watch it. If you want to go beyond the mind, turn awareness back to itself through self-inquiry. That works. What am I? Who's aware? What's aware? What's here really? That works, but that has to be done a fair bit. And if there isn't a mind that will support what's been found, well, it's not going to stay anyway. A mind that contracts, goes into resistance when it meets something it doesn't like, is not going to support enlightenment, not really. How can it? Awareness is going to come off itself and back to the mind. So I wouldn't say that resting in beingness necessarily raises your consciousness levels.
The following question is from a viewer. Hi Vishrant, what would be the next step after becoming aware of awareness? I've become aware of it and it is quite beautiful, but I don't know what the next step would be. Thank you very much.
Okay. So through some technique you've become aware of awareness. There's a difference between being aware of the awareness through the mind and awareness simply aware of itself. It's like you're walking around an abyss, looking at the nothingness, looking at the emptiness, looking at the beauty of it, and you're walking around it, looking at it. And then one day you find you are the abyss. That's quantumly different than walking around looking at it. One day you are it. The eye is dropped. This is the ultimate accident. If this is ongoing, this is enlightenment. But there's nothing personal about it. The eye drops. Just pure awareness, pure consciousness here.
Next, we have a question from Chris.
Hello, Vishrant.
Hello, Chris.
I believe I heard Osho say that the universe is evolving and not perfect, and perfection can drive people crazy. When you look at all the suffering in the world, am I misunderstanding when you say that life is perfection upon perfection upon perfection?
Yeah. Because you're looking at it through a mind that judges good, bad, right and wrong. From the perspective of beingness, it's all perfectly, exactly how it's meant to be every moment. Evolving could be occurring, as Osho stated, but everything about that is also perfect. But this can only be truly understood from Satori or from enlightenment. It can't be understood from the mind, not really. It has to be a direct knowing, a direct experience of that. Osho also said, perfection upon perfection upon perfection. Love upon love upon love.
Okay. Thank you.
It's hard sometimes, Chris, when you see the suffering in the world to think that it's perfect. I understand. But you've got to step back a little bit further from the mind. You've got to turn awareness onto itself. And then you see a way bigger picture from a universal point of view, that there are no mistakes, that everything's happening exactly how it's meant to be, always has, and can in no other way operate. Thanks, Chris.
Next, we have a question from Abay.
Hello, Abay.
Hi, Vishrant. Vishrant, is every wound somewhere connected with the betrayal wound?
No, not necessarily. A lot of the wounds are connected. A lot of them are connected to injustice wounding. Someone betrays you and you think it's not fair. Injustice wounding it's not fair. And unfortunately, as children, we've been programmed to believe that life should be fair, when in actual fact it is not fair. All you have to do is look at the animal kingdom to see how fair life is. The big animals eat the little animals, the sick animals and the old animals. There's no fairness in nature. Fairness is a mind-made way of looking at the world. It's not a reality. And the more programmed we are into believing in fairness, the more likely we are to get hurt by the world we live in, because it is definitely not fair. So fairness can be connected to betrayal wounding, some of the other wounds can be connected, but not necessarily. They can stand alone.
Okay. Thank you, Vishrant.
The other thing about the betrayal wound, which is really interesting, is humans betray each other. It's what is. It's like every time a man or a woman looks at another partner in a sexual way when they're married to someone or involved with someone, it's a form of betrayal. Yet it's overlooked. Human beings betray all the time.
And that is just a nature of human being, a human being, that the partner looks at someone else or we look at someone else. So it is okay in the sense this betrayal is just a part of a human being.
Well, I recognise that betrayal wounding was a part of my makeup. I had a fair bit of it. And I examined it all and discovered that betrayal is rubbish. What right do I have to say whether someone's betraying or not betraying? How do I know in God's big picture for everyone that that person isn't doing exactly what they're meant to be doing? There's a certain amount of insanity in the world in thinking things should be a certain way when they're not. It's like human beings betray. To actually think that they shouldn't betray or they don't betray is delusional. Everyone betrays.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Vishrant.
Thank you, Don.
The next question has been written by a viewer. How do we deal with fear that's almost always present, no matter what is the situation?
My answer to that is always pretty much the same. Sit still and watch the mind. Sit still and allow yourself to breathe out fully, and on the outward breath let everything go. And continue to sit still, and just as you breathe out, let everything go. You breathe in again, and then you breathe out, and you let everything go. People who operate from a lot of fear do a lot of moving. It's a form of rajas. Sitting still, doing nothing, pretty much overcomes rajas. Stay still, watch the breath. On the outward breath, let go of everything. This is very beautiful, but it takes practice and it takes time. It's up to you. You want to defeat this anxiety, sit still, watch the breath, and on the outward breath, let go of everything. Don't hold on to anything, not even your life. Let everything go. Okay?
The next question has been written by Beck. I have seen Osho's image a few times, but only in very deep meditation. I have tried not analysing this, but it felt quite profound and is difficult to shake or ignore. Can you please comment?
Why ignore it? Why not study him? Why not study what he said? He was a great teacher. He was a great mystic. Very wise. You're having the images, follow them. That's what I did. It took me to higher consciousness and eventually super consciousness.
The next question has been written by a viewer. I can feel other people's energy, but cannot always tell what it means. Do you have any tips on better understanding this energy?
It took me years and years and years to work out what different energies meant, because most people can feel energy to some degree, and particularly energy like anger or sadness. I used to ask people, because I could feel them. I used to ask them, what are you feeling right now? How are you going? And they'd tell me, and I started to put a portfolio together in my mind of what different energies felt like in other people. And so what I was actually doing was learning the language of energy, but it took ages to produce because there's no one teaching it. As you open up more and more, you become more available to the energy world. You become refined and you feel the different energies that people put off. And if you ask those people what those energies mean or how they're feeling at the time, you'll start to get a portfolio that you can understand that tells you, well, that energy means that. I don't know of anyone who's teaching this subject. It's up to you.
The next question has been written by Kelly. I heard some snoring. I was wondering who is snoring. Suddenly, I realized I was the one snoring and got woken up. Do you have any comments or teachings on my recent frequent experience? Thank you.
It sounds like you became conscious in your sleep and you heard the body snoring and it alerted you. Woken up by your own alarm, your own snoring. I don't think that's anything super special, but it sounds like fun.
The next question has been written by a viewer. Whenever I smoke hashish, I get many thoughts in my mind, like who am I and what is my purpose in this world? And then I jump to the existence of God, and sometimes I feel like I am a God. Please give me your thoughts about it. Is this normal?
Well, hashish is a drug that induces dream. It's a dream drug. Opiates induce dream as well. Hashish, it induces dream. It can get you to start looking at things a little differently, but it's still a drug and it's still a dream. I think it's possible that people can have what's called spiritual experiences using drugs, but really this game has to be done without drugs. As far as asking the question, what are we doing here? Who am I? What's this all about? Well, that's a pretty age-old question. I started asking that one when I was in boarding school at 14. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of it? And I wasn't using hashish. I was just alone in a tower for a couple of years. They're good questions though. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's my purpose? These are good questions. When you put your mind to God, well, we can imagine God, same as we can imagine love. We can even imagine silence and stillness. We have an amazing ability to imagine, and hashish activates the imagination, takes us into dream. And so we can have experiences that could simply be our imagination, or they could be beyond. That's a possibility. But if you really want to know yourself as God, you have to turn awareness onto itself, and it has to stay there. And the definition of God is everything. It is omnipotent itself. And when awareness is on itself, that is the case. And if it stays on itself, that is enlightenment. And so those who have woken up have said sometimes, I am God. Not that there's any I involved, but it's because they're experiencing themselves as the universe. That is very beautiful. But I don't really support people using hashish to find it. I support people using self-inquiry, meditation, the practice of openness, the practice of witnessing the mind, the practices that have been handed down for thousands of years by thousands of sages, the practices that actually work. You want to get addicted to something, don't get addicted to hashish. Get addicted to truth and give your life to it. That is always the best.
The next question has been written by a viewer. If I get enlightened and leave the body, my parents and siblings will feel this as a loss and feel pain. How do I break this attachment and make this okay?
You can't be responsible for other people's loss or their suffering or anything in that way, because we all make ourselves feel. This is one of the aspects of being a mature adult. The world can't make me feel, I make myself feel. Something may touch me, but I'm the one who's been touched. It's my feeling. It wasn't someone else who did anything to me. I'm responsible for it. I'm not a victim of other people's behaviour. I make myself feel. Now, I had this attitude since I was 19 years old. What happens to your relatives if you wake up is they get a light in their life. If you die as a result of enlightenment, well, that's simply what happens. You're going to die anyway, so are they. It's what is. It's what's meant to be, otherwise it wouldn't be so. Let go, let go, let go.
The next question is from Susha.
Hi, Vishrant.
Hello, Susha.
Vishrant, how can I stay open when a lot of emotional pain comes up?
Practice. Look, more than likely your practice when emotional pain has been coming up in the past is to close down. And so that will be a default pattern. To stay open, you need a default pattern of staying open. And the only way you can develop new default patterns is practice. There is no other way. What do you practice? Have a look and see, and you'll see what you've achieved. Because whatever we've practiced, we have achieved. When you meet people who are miserable, They've practiced being miserable and they've achieved it. When you meet people who are happy, you meet people who have practiced being happy. They've achieved that through practice. We create our reality by the way we think. And our default patterns are relatively hard to change, so we have to practice something different to what we've been doing before for long enough until the new pattern becomes our default pattern. What have you been practicing? Have a look and see.
No, openness was not what I was practicing all my life.
Oh, why not?
So I'm over there now.
Why weren't you practicing openness? You should have been practicing openness. Everybody should have been. Or is it possible we weren't taught that at school and our parents didn't teach us?
We were not taught that anywhere.
No, me neither. What a shame. Because openness is the only thing that supports love. Closure definitely doesn't. Defendedness definitely doesn't. And love's the most beautiful thing here. Most people cut themselves off from love because they're too defended, too closed, too resistant. Sad.
Yeah. So when so much pain is felt, do I just breathe it out and just die inside?
No, you accept it. You see, what you're trying to do is get rid of it. And that's not the answer. It's about accepting it. You accept it that's there. You warmly welcome it. You accept it. Your breathing out methodology is probably trying to get rid of it, probably trying to escape again, which will repress it and save it for another day. Just be okay with it. Warmly welcome it. Just make it part of the tapestry of the day. You don't need to focus on it. It's just part of what's happening.
Okay. Oh, it's just tears and tears just flowing out. And
Yeah, well, you let that happen. You welcome it. You make it okay. You've spent a lifetime avoiding, now welcome it. Make it okay.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Susha.
The next question is from a viewer. Vishrant, how to stop flip-flopping awareness?
I just loved what Ramana Maharshi said about this. When asked the question, when do I stop self-inquiring, his answer was very simple: when there is nobody left to inquire. You have to accept the flip-flopping and continue to self-inquire, removing all obstacles that are in the way of truth, because you're in love with truth. Truth is like the beloved that you just want to be with, and you take away everything that's in the way. That's the best you can do.
The next question has been written by a viewer. Hello, I can feel myself, my soul, true love, or whatever you might call it, but I am in constant pain for years. My nervous system is inflamed. What can I do to reduce the pain? No medications ever help. Sometimes I can feel ecstasy, but I'm not functional. I cannot talk even normally because my body is in pain.
Yeah. My whole process is one of acceptance rather than resistance. If you can use medication for pain, great. If it doesn't work, well, that's what is. Acceptance is the key to happiness. Acceptance is the key to higher consciousness. Acceptance is the key to learning unconditional surrender. Practice acceptance instead of resistance. See how that goes. I accept life as it is, the good, the bad and the ugly. It doesn't matter what appears, it's acceptable, unless I make it not acceptable, which I'm not about to do, because that would be me creating resistance, which is me creating suffering in myself. Not interested in doing that. Life is the way it is. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. Doesn't really matter. It's all accepted as it is. Whatever you're doing, accept it. However you're feeling, accept it. In acceptance, in 100% acceptance, there is peace.
The next question has been written by Beck. I've heard you say letting go of all attachments is necessary. Can you please expand on how to let go of the attachment to children? It feels very difficult.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. It was the hardest thing for me to do, let go of my children. Awakening was coming. I could feel the silence, I could feel the emptiness, the nothingness of everything. I could feel myself as an I disappearing completely. Yet there was this attachment that kept me tethered here as an ego, and it was to my children. Because I knew that in enlightenment I had no future. I couldn't guarantee anything to anyone because I didn't even know if I would survive. But I looked at it from this perspective. Would my children be better off with a father who was ego-based or with a father who was awake? So I gave them the opportunity to be with a father who was awake, and I died and let go of everything. And my children grew up in a Buddha field, and they are sparkling to this day.
The next question has been written by a viewer. I don't know if it's my mind games, but I am blessed with so much in life. I have good health, family, living conditions, and resources. Seeing people suffer in some things like health makes me feel guilty. Can you please comment?
Yeah, never feel guilty. It's not a good thing to do. It's just a form of self-obsession. You can, if you've done something wrong to someone somewhere along the line, you can feel regret. That's great because it opens the heart. But beating yourself up for it, what a waste of life that is. That's just violence to yourself. Drop all guilt. It's unworthy of us as human beings. It's a terrible thing to teach people, to be guilty. Never ever support guilt in yourself. Ever, ever, ever. The world is the way the world is. What people get, they're meant to get. There's no mistakes. Everybody's getting exactly what they're meant to get. This is karma. Never feel guilty about anything. Guilt is just something some religions use to manipulate and control the people who are in the religions. It's ugly. The same as using fear to manipulate and control people is ugly. Never support fear in yourself. Never support guilt in yourself. Squeeze the juice out of life. Live fully. Look, the world is going to beat you up sooner or later anyway. Why help them?
The next question is from a viewer. Should we show openness to everything, including the evolution of bombing or rise of brutality or terrorism or extremism of all kinds?
Yes. Openness counts for everything. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to put up with anything, though. It just means you're going to do it from a place of openness. So you can accept the tragedies of the world and you can be open to them, but you can still move to helping, to change, if you want to. People assume that once you accept life, you're impotent. It's not true. You can be wide open and still change the world if you want to. It's up to you. It just means being undefended, being vulnerable in the world, being yin instead of yang. This is the way of the mystic.
The next question, do you have any regrets?
The one that had regrets is no longer here, and so I can't say yes to that. But before awakening, yes, there were regrets. The mind had regrets. The I had regrets. And those regrets helped open the heart more and more and more. But I have currently no regrets. There is only now. The past isn't real. The future isn't real. How can there be any regrets except in dream?
Are regrets in the way of full acceptance of what is?
Tosh, dear man, you've run out of questions. Thank you for Satsang. Good to see you brave hearts here today.